Evan, I'm going to say good afternoon, or is it good morning first? I don't know what time zone you are.
It's good afternoon. I am on the East Coast.
Okay, likewise, thank you for taking the time. Longtime fan of your work, every darn episode of Dark Side of the Ring and Dark Side, etc. But this series has me even more excited as more of a music person
hmm
than a wrestling person. How long was Into the Void in the works for?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like in some ways it's been in the works my entire life. In some
Sure.
ways, just growing up as a huge, metal fan, ever since I was 11 years old. With learning how to play music and just being a fan of, bands like Metallica and AC/DC, Pantera, etc. But the show itself, we always once we started Dark Side of the Ring, we always felt like the metal world was a good second zone to explore because you do have like with wrestling what's so fascinating is sort of the blurred lines between reality and fiction,
Yeah.
kayfabe, all that stuff. With metal it's like you have these larger than life heroes of the genre who create these fantastical universes through their music.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there is, who they are in real life and the trials and tribulations and the things they go through, just like, like you could say it could be similar to the wrestling business. And so it feels like a similar sandbox playing in that. And also just because we're just fans as kids of this too. So it's very personal to us. But we really started in earnest working on it about 3 years ago. And
Mhm.
first met with Hulu and the gang over there around that time, maybe 2.5 years ago ish. And then here we are, which is just hard to believe. Hard to believe.
So I have to ask you about the title of the series, Into the
Uh-huh.
Void, because there's the Black Sabbath song of note, but there's also the great Kiss song
Right.
from
Well, there's
Psycho
also,
Circus.
yeah, right. And there's also Kiss has Snowblind and Black Sabbath does too. Or I mean, Ace Frehley, I guess, has Snowblind, but so does Sabbath.
Yeah,
Um,
so was Black Sabbath entirely the source? And the reason I have to ask is Randy Rhoads is one episode, but
mhm.
Wendy O. Williams is another episode, and Wendy was, of course, Kiss adjacent.
That's true. That is true. I have to admit, Black Sabbath is my favorite band of all time. I've just been obsessed my whole life. I collect, Sabbath vinyl, eight tracks, anything. I'm a huge Sabbath collector. So when it came time to try and figure out a name for the show, we thought that a song title would be really cool to find
Hmm.
something that encapsulated the series through that. And Into the Void, one of my favorite album closers of all time, but also maybe one of my favorite Sabbath songs of all time, and just felt like it fit really well. So yeah, it's an overt Sabbath reference.
So the 8 episodes that I'm privy to, it's an interesting mix of mainstream as it comes for metal and
Yeah,
obscure.
yeah,
Because obviously Dimebag Darrell, that was an
hmm
international news story. Judas Priest, that's even in "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel and Randy Rhoads. Everyone knows who that is. I'm not sure if everyone knows who Chuck from Death is,
Oh, right.
or Confess, that episode about Iranian metal and all that. So the way I read this, you could have 30, 40, 50, 60 episodes of this. This could be another 10 season show like Dark Side of the Ring.
I hope so. That would be fantastic because there's so many more stories that we want to tell. Obviously, starting out the show, we were starting this out, without really any street cred in the metal world whatsoever. So, the whole process of getting access to the stories for this show, was kind of coming completely, out of just being the wrestling guys, and trying to meet people and try to get access and make relationships, which we were able to do. But there's a couple episodes I know that once this season launches and people get to see the show and what we're all about, because maybe we'll get into it, but a lot of approaches other TV shows have taken looking at the metal world. It's very sometimes can be very cliched. It can be
Yes.
very sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it doesn't show the bands in the best of light. And so, a lot of artists don't, when you're kind of coming out of nowhere and just being like, "Hey, we want to tell your story," they're like, "Who are you?" And what do you want to do? So it's a process of getting to know the people, which we were able to do on all these shows, but in the future, it's just going to be that much not easier, but it'll be that much, better for people to see our work and see what we can do in this space. But yes, you're right. There's a balance of mainstream acts and bands that very few have heard of. And that really represents to me also kind of our personal taste with heavy metal. There's a lot of, for me, I'm a connoisseur of the underground, deep, obscure. Just for example, like I have a little prop here, but this Hellion record,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, is something I just always had, and always thought was really good and really underrated.
Hmm.
And I remember when we were coming up with the episodes for the show and we were getting ready to go into pre-production, and it was flipping through my records and then just like stopping on Hellion and being like, wait, there's got to be a story here, right? And then you look into it, and then, oh my God, yes, there is. So that was a cool sort of experience there. Same sort of thing with Enemy, the Unholy
From
Death.
Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, of course, I sort of knew the headline of the story, but didn't know, all the other details, the minutia in terms of the family, what the band went through, and everybody, which is, just one of the more emotional episodes of the whole story, one of the more unbelievable stories of the season. But yeah, so it's just it's been great. I mean, with the wrestling show, we do it kind of similar. We like to tell stories for people who aren't fans of this at all from the outside world, and they're learning about all this stuff like Randy Rhoads and Dimebag Darrell for the first time. Then we want to make sure we give some stuff for the real hardcore fans, that might be more interested a couple layers deeper.
I'd say the NME episode was like your Billy Jack Haynes episode,
Yeah,
to draw a parallel.
sure.
But
Yep.
I noticed in looking at the major topics, and hopefully there's much, much, much more to come, I don't see
Yep.
any representation of Van Halen. Would Van Halen not
Right.
be heavy enough for this series? Or is it just, hey, we'll see what happens?
Well, yeah, so that was kind of like a choice, mainly because most, I feel like most examinations of metal, hard rock, in the mainstream, of course, there's great docs that have been made, but 9 times out of 10, when you see a piece, it's like it is kind of the default to glam or hair or that sort of VH1, for lack of a better terminology, brand of metal band, and we kind of wanted to just shy away from that, and we wanted to try and go harder and heavier and darker and explore those types of just very strictly like overt metal bands. Obviously, you can make a case that Wendy O. Williams is not, but she had her metal career, of course. And I think that makes it interesting, and that's something we wanted to do. We wanted to kind of make a statement with the way we were approaching the genre, as opposed to how it usually knee-jerk always is, on television.
So to confirm, there's no Dark Side of David Lee Roth episode coming.
Not in the works. No. Yeah.
So ultimately, to pare down these 8 episodes, did you have 15 things that you started pre-production on and then pare it down?
Yeah. We had a lot. We had a lot of different stories that we wanted to tell. Some more thought out than others. Some just, log lines or concepts. And then you explore them. You see if the band wants to participate. You see if, who from the inside inner circle wants to participate. And then based upon, who we could get access to or who wanted to tell their story, that got us to the next part, And so, yeah, I mean, we had tons of ideas, some that unfortunately didn't come together for a variety of different reasons, whether it was access or timing. There was a couple episodes we really wanted to do, but just by the nature of timing, they didn't come together, which will be exciting if we get a season 2, because the timing would probably be better then. And there's some great stories that we would love to tell for that. But yeah, for the most part, we just had a huge list, and then it was kind of what came together in the end.
When I had the pleasure of interviewing Jason, it was on a junket related to kids versus aliens. And that was the first time I kind of realized, like, oh, Jason does stuff outside of this. In terms of you, I know we're here to promote Into the Void, but are you working on other things besides Into the Void, Dark Side, that series?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dark Side of the Ring still going strong, which is hard to believe. So always working on that. Keeping the lights on there. We've been really working on this for the last 2 years. Into the Void has been the biggest lift of anything that I think we've both ever done. But we have tons of other projects that are either in various stages of development or other things we want to put together. Some wrestling related, some not. Jason, has been into has been in the world of scripted for a while now, and he's got some exciting projects as well. So we're always working on tons of stuff. I have a podcast. I have a couple of YouTube channels. So we're always keeping ourselves busy.
Last question I have here. which ties in with more so the dark side stuff. But again, we're going to keep saying Into the Void, so the SEO and the algorithm picks it up, and the article is going to largely focus on that.
Sure.
But I was curious if you were aware of a subculture that kind of emerged as a result of the dark side of the 90s, the stuff, the episode about Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Were you familiar with the Dabbleverse that has come about as a result of that episode and similar events?
I've heard that term, but I'm not 100% sure what it is exactly. But please tell me.
Oh, basically, Stuttering John Melendez from Howard Stern and later The Tonight Show,
Right.
basically started off a podcast that people were listening to, like hate listening to. And then these people doing recap podcasts about this is what John said today. And he couldn't take the joke, and then he backfired.
Okay.
But one of the main things that happened, because he's now suing a couple of those podcasters in court.
Wow.
One of the things that ultimately happened is they bring up the dark side episode where he shows the tweet that
Amazing.
I guess you guys paid a couple of $100 to him for showing the tweet.
Wow.
And that regularly gets brought up, and I think is in this court case.
That's wild. I mean, Stuttering John, obviously I know. All of the other dark side, franchise, shows we actually don't make, but they are other creators who make them and stuff, which is great. But yeah, I actually haven't seen that episode, but I have to go check it out now. That's awesome.
Simply put, thank you for the great work that you continue to put out. I loved how the last Dark Side season had some funny episodes.
Oh,
like Buff Bagwell, where it's not tragic, it's just kind of funny, Brutus Beefcake, etc. So I admire that you're able to make dark things funny, and really looking forward to what's to come. Hope there's an Into the Void season 2 as well.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Me too.